Hi guys, welcome back to the CS Classroom. So what we're going to do today is we're going to learn how to create a form and display it to the user right here on this page. In a previous tutorial we created an HTML page where we displayed hello world, and when we went to the address, when we went to our base URL, our home URL, 127.0.0.1 port 8000 /guest/home, we could view that. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a form which we can then submit to the database. That form will take information about a guest because this is a guestbook app. So let's go ahead and let's get started. So right here, the first thing we actually want to do, just to make things a bit easier, is we want to get rid of this part right here. We want it so that when we just go to 127.0.0.1 port 8000, we would see this hello world page, so without any of the other fancy stuff. So we're going to go to our project configuration folder, guestbook, to urls.py, and we're going to get rid of guests. If you remember, guests was what came first, so this is what we had before. So this will get rid of, making this blank right here, gets rid of the guests. Then we're going to go to urls.py in our guests app folder. And we're going to make this blank as well. So we'll save that. And that's getting rid of the home. So we're going to backspace this, and we're going to hit enter now. And now, just by going to this page, we can actually refresh it. We can see our hello world. So now what we want to do is we want to create a form and display it on this page. Now, what was actually displaying our hello world was in guests/templates/guests /index.html. So all of our code for this particular page is in index.html. So normally if we were just creating an HTML page, we would have something like this, and then we'd have different fields inside. But in Python we have a different mechanism by which to create forms, and this allows us to more easily manage forms within the application. So what we're going to do first is in our guests folder right here, we're going to create a new file, forms.py. So let's go ahead and close some of these files up here that we're not using at the moment. So we've got forms.py, and we're going to say from Django import forms. And that's going to get some code that allows us to deal with forms. And then we're going to say class guest form. This is where we're actually going to create the form, forms.form. Name equals forms.char field for a character field. Label equals name. This means we'll see a name label in our HTML with a max length of 200. Then we'll have email address equals forms.char field again. We'll have label equals email, and we won't give that a fixed length. Finally, we'll have message equals forms.char field again, but in here we'll have widget equals forms.textArea. This will give us a text area field, so we can display a larger input for more text, such as that which would be in a message. So here we've created our form in some Django code in forms.py. Now to actually display that in index.html, we're going to do a few different things. Now first we're going to go back to not index.html, but we're going to go back to views.py. Remember, we were able to display index.html through this index function, because when we went to urls.py, we had our path, our URL, and then views.index. So going back to views.py, right here, what we're going to say is form equals guest form. And for this to work, we need to import our guest form from .forms, which is what we just put our guest form class into. So this allows us to import that code from forms.py. Let's actually just save these. So we've got a form right here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a dictionary with a key of form, and then form input there as the value. And we're going to pass this to guess/index.html. So we're going to have context right here. So all of this is going to get passed to our index.html file. And this is one of the beauties of using Django. We can actually put stuff like this, or we can send stuff to HTML files in a way that we can't in just pure HTML. So once we've done that, we're going to go to right here in index.html. We're going to make a few changes. We're going to put this right here, form, which will allow us to display our form. We also need to put we also need to put a line called crf_token. And this is actually a security feature that I'm not going to go into at the moment, but this needs to be put in the line above all forms. Actually, we can put it like that. So we're actually we are going to keep this form here, but the inputs are going to be created via our forms.py file right here. So for now, let's go ahead and save all of this. And let's go ahead and let's refresh our page right here. So now, as you can see, we have 3 form fields corresponding to the name, email address, and message right here. So now that we've done this, what we want to actually do is find a way to submit all of the information that we would type into this form to our Django application, and then to store it in our database. So we're going to go back to our template, and we're going to do a few different things. So right here for form, we're going to say action equals guess/create with a method of post. And what this means is that we're actually going to send the data from this form right here, to guess/create within our application. So to that address, to that URL. And we're going to use a method called post, the post method, in order to do this. Now, the other thing we need to do is we need to have input type equals submit and value equals submit. Essentially here we're going to create a submit button. So let's go ahead and refresh our page right here, and we have that submit button right there. As you can see again, this doesn't look very good because we haven't styled it with CSS. That's what we're going to do in the next part of the series. Anyways, so right here, basically what's going to happen is when we click submit, all the data in this form is going to get submitted to guess/create. Now, how does that work? Basically what we're going to do is we're going to go to urls.py. And what we're going to do is we're going to say path is create. Now, actually, I think what we're going to do is instead of having the guess there, to make it a bit simpler, we'll just have create. And so we're going to label it this way. It's important to have the slash after the actual address, or at the end of the address. So we'll have create. So that way, if we go to 127.0.0.1 port 8000/create, then that's where the form will be submitted. We won't be able to go there in our browser, but our form will send the information there. So we're going to create that route right here. So path create. Then we're going to say views.create, and then name equals create. Now, notice that this views right here corresponds to views.py. So just as we created an index function right here, we're going to create a create function to accept the data from our form. So we're going to say def create request, and then we're going to say if request method equals post, Then form equals guest form, request.post. Now, this post right here corresponds to the post method we specified right here. And that basically means that when we submit this data to our form right here, the information that we're submitting won't be viewable in the browser in the URL. We'll just be sending the information to that particular URL, and no one else will be able to see what was submitted. So basically, there are no other signs this information was submitted. We just click submit and everything goes to our application. There's more to it than that, but for this particular tutorial, we're not going to go into much depth. Anyways, we have guest form, and right here we're taking the information from our request object. Our request object is what's sent from the web browser to our application, and we are putting the information into our guest form. So basically it's going to go into this right here, so that the information is organized in the appropriate way by name, email address, and message. Now that we've done that, we're going to say if form.isValid, just making sure that everything is done properly, or all the information submitted properly in the form. Name equals form, that clean data. Name. Email address. And we're going to have message. Then we're going to create a new guest object with them. So we'll say guest equals guest, name equals name, email address equals email address, and message equals message. So this guest should actually have been imported up here. We're going to say from models import .guest. It should actually be from .models. And that means from this models.py file right here, we're just taking our guest object. Now, if you remember earlier, this is done very similar to how we created guests in the command line or in the terminal earlier. It's the exact same code. We're going to have guest.save. And then I think what we're going to do is once the user saves all of the information here, we're going to redirect them to another page where we show a list of guests that have currently been submitted. So we're going to say redirect guests / list, and actually we don't need this one, we just need list. So actually, well, yeah, that's what we're going to do for now. Now, so basically what will happen is we will submit our information right here, and then we'll get sent to a list page that shows all of the currently entered users. So in order to create that, that's going to be at basically 127.0.0.1 :8000/list. So we need to go back to urls.py. We need to add list right here. We'll say path /list views.list name equals list. Okay, that should be good for now. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to actually add a return right here. And then right here we specified views.list. So we're going to go ahead and create that function in views.py. So we'll say def list request guest equals guest .objects.all context equals guest list. And guess. And then we're going to show all of the currently entered guests in a page called guestlist.html. So let's say return render request guest guest list.html, and then pass that context with all of the guests. Now, in order for this to work, we need to create this guest list.html. So let's go ahead and in here, in guess, we're going to say new file, guest list.html. And actually, we can specify guess. It is in the guest folder after all. So how this is going to work in guest list is we're just going to create an HTML file, and we're going to give it a header. We're going to say h1 guest list, so just a big title. And what's interesting is right here, we're actually going to be passing an array of guest objects. And we're basically passing that array, giving it the name guest list. And that's going to be sent to guestlist.html. So here we can do something that we can't normally do in regular HTML, and we can actually just use some Python code. So we can say for guest in guest list guest, well, okay, let's do that. Guest.name, and then we'll just close that for loop off here. So that means that we're going to go through each and every guest in the guest list that's stored in our database and display the name for those guests. Maybe to make it a bit more interesting, we could also show their email address, followed by, we'll say guest.email address, followed by BR, there we go. So let's put all of that together, and we're going to test all of this out by submitting an object right here. Let's go ahead and let's test that out, and let's see if we get any errors. So right here, I'm just going to say jeff@gmail.com, and just type in a message, and we'll click submit. Okay, so we typed in, so right here it says the request URL was /guest/create, and that didn't seem to work right there. Let's go ahead and let's refresh this. Let's also do an inspect right here. So if we inspect this form, okay, we can see it's going to create. That must have been some HTML that was left over from before we refreshed the page. So let's try that again. Okay, so if I zoom in here a little bit to this message, it says that right here, the current path create didn't match any of these. So that create was in our HTML right here. And I think the problem is probably with the slashes, because there's a slash before create right here and before list right here, which is probably a problem for us. The list being a problem later on. Now this may seem petty, but the position of the slash actually does make a difference. So let's go back to urls.py where we specified these and move these slashes over right here. So we've saved that. Let's see if we can easily just resubmit it. Okay, now we seem to have had a solution with create, and now we have a different problem with /create/list. Okay, so let's go back to our urls.py, and this seems to be fine, but it looks like our application wanted to send us to /create/list. So that's going to be this line of code right here. So you have list slash, okay, you've got list slash right here. Let's try adding another slash right here. Oftentimes that will help in order to make the URL more specific. We have redirect, we've imported redirect. Everything seems to be good on that front. Let's try again. So let's actually refresh. Let's submit this again. Okay, we've got another issue right here. It says context must be a dict rather than a set. So that's obviously going to be a list right here. So that's going to be our list URL. So that means it has to happen somewhere in our list function right here, which is probably right here. So the issue right here is we have guest list right here, and we have a comma instead of a colon like we did right up here. So let's go ahead and let's fix that. That actually makes it a dictionary rather than a set. So we'll go ahead and submit again. And okay, it looks like we actually were able to submit our this same Jeff object 3 times. We just had problems getting to our list right here, to our list URL right here. So all in all, it did seem to work fine. We can go ahead and submit another one. We can say Jack at gmail.com and Jack. So we can submit that. We can see our list where we've got Jack right down here. And if we just refresh this right here, then we can see all these different objects. Just looking at the latest one, we see Jack right there. So that's basically how you can submit and display a form using Django. Now, what I want to do in the next tutorial is I actually want to go over how we can integrate CSS and JavaScript in order to make this more interactive. And what we'll also talk about is how we can delete guests using some of the JavaScript and some of the additional HTML that we'll be adding to this application. So it's going to be more about appearance and adding additional functionality to this application in the next tutorial. If you'd like to see the next tutorial, and just in general, more like these, please remember to like and subscribe. So like the video and subscribe to the channel. Have a nice day.